Alrighty, guys, we are live and we are back. I'm just kind of checking everything here that we are popping on all platforms where you guys always watch us, right? And if this is your first time, welcome. I'm pretty excited to see you guys here. I'm joined today, per usual, by my good friend and a mentor, a growth clinic mentor, Matt. So yeah, we're about to get started. We're going to talk about something really cool today. So Matt, how are you doing? What's new with you?
All right. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. The new year's getting going. It seems like January, we're finally getting a rhythm, right? Like January seems to be a little bit tough to get things going. The holidays, you get a extra Martin Luther King Day kind of thrown in there once,
Which is nice.
so yeah, but it feels like we're digging deep now, right? Ready to get into it. Everybody's kind of back to work and getting into the flow here. Um, so hey, do we want to? Let's see here. What should we talk about here? Scalable infrastructure. Does that sound like something we want to do?
That's right. That's right. We're going to be
All
talking today
right.
about scalable infrastructure, all kinds of kind of
Yeah.
geeky and smart things, and well, at least we think they're smart. And yeah, so let's go ahead and
Yeah.
get going.
So we're talking cloud services, right? Primarily there, right? When you're looking to scale your business, right? Leveraging some of the cloud resources that are out there. What does that mean to your business? Kind of that infrastructure around it. What does this build on? Why does that matter? What are the service providers out there, right? A lot of people hear about what's this AWS? What's Google doing with their cloud services? What's Microsoft doing with what's this Azure thing? We're going to be talking about that a little bit there. Um, and also why there is absolutely no excuses, right? Where you as a business owner, even if you're a corporation, right? You're going to be using these cloud services and you need to be able to leverage those tools to scale up your business, scale up your organization, your team. So it's important to get educated there, right? So let's get going. Let's talk about it.
Let's go, guys. All right. Well, just like you said, Matt, we're gonna discuss all these things. But before we do this, I just want to maybe kind of go back and you know me, and I do this all the time. Like, let's for just a split second remind ourselves why we do what we do, right? And why is it important? Because when we remember why we do what we do, somehow our desire to do it like levels off, and it's there and it's increasing, and we're just realizing, okay, this is how, this is when, this is with whom I need to be doing this, right? And so why you do what you do, and why are we going to be talking today about all these things and stuff like that? Well, the idea is that we are here, right? We always say that Growth Clinic, we're all about, growth, right? We start with ourselves, right? So we then say, okay, once we're ready, once you're optimized, you are ready to start, going out there and doing stuff, right? And so you select your craft, right? You devote yourself to something, and you grow your organization, your business, your department, your craft, right? And then hopefully, as a like step three, all that impacts your community, right? You do this for people. Hopefully, your product or service solves problems of real people. So we always talk about the you part, right? So kind of optimizing yourself and waking up early, and Dan is here on a regular basis telling us how to wake up, how to eat, how to exercise and things like that. Well, today we're going to be talking a little bit more about kind of that second piece, like your craft, right? We're going to geek out a little bit, so growing your craft, growing your business, growing your, be it a nonprofit organization, be it say running for office, right? Be it like you're an artist, you're a musician, right? You want to create a product, right? Which, by the way, art, Matt, we were talking, you and I, yesterday about
Yeah.
this. Art and business has so much in common, right?
It,
Which is like
it
fascinating. It was
really
you,
does.
it
Right?
was your thought, and
Yeah.
I was like, hold on, that's true. So fascinating.
Yeah. It's like when you're creating a product, right? If you're an artist, you're creating a product, right? There's always some type of a product to it, right? And there's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
initial phase. You're kind of sketching out things initially, right? Figuring out how to build it. But a lot of times it's up front, right? On what am I going to create, right? It's always great when somebody can just all right, knock out a painting, but that's after you've done all the training and the
Yeah.
you've gone through
And
years
just
and
like
years of
art,
that.
I mean, you can create a just like art, you can create a piece, you can introduce it to people, and nobody cares, right? And
Right.
if you've been in business, if you started something of your own, you know exactly what that means. And then maybe you write a two or three or 400 songs, and then one of them pops, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden the song number 229 was a total disaster, and every single one of them before was all a disaster. But all of a sudden that 230th song is what gets you to be visible, to be known, and stuff like that. And all of a sudden people care, and all of a sudden that's a success. So there's so much that precedes it. So again, that iceberg is so huge, like below the water, right? And so
Hmm.
hopefully we're all in this kind of grind, on this daily grind of like creating this value, right? Growing this value. So and hopefully at the end of the day, I mean, we're improving people's lives. And so it's just a matter of time when people, if you do that, if you don't fake it, right? If you do that, people will start caring. You will see. But yeah, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about the empowering infrastructures, how we kind of called it, or scalable infrastructure. And so, what are we referring to? Well, we're talking about the fact that as a leader, right? And again, be it whatever type of organization that you are, whatever type of a job that you are a leader, right? In a sense. And your job is to connect dots. That's the way I kind of put it out there. So Matt, tell me your thoughts on this. But we're all connecting dots, right? We're all solving problems, and sometimes as a leader, that's your job to connect, to find a problem, right, and figure out
Yeah.
a solution for that problem. So you're constantly engaged with your user, right? Let's call it just kind of broadly, like your consumer, your
Hmm.
user, and somebody who's capable of helping you solve that problem, right? So on one side, you've got this geeky person who knows nothing about the consumer, but man, that individual is like extremely smart, and is highly capable. And on the other side, you've got a consumer who doesn't know any of the technicality of it, but knows exactly what the problem is and is seeking to figure this out. And so you become the bridge, right?
Hmm.
And so one of the dots that we're connecting is this infrastructure piece, right? So think about it, like the world is moving really fast. And I mean, that's not, I don't have to go far explaining this because we know exactly what we're talking about. M1, M2, M3, laptop screen, Wi-Fi, smart this, smart that. I mean, we are in this like extremely, what's the term? Like just a viral loop of just all kinds of stuff. One technology
It's like
feeds into the next one.
exponential, right? It's just
There you
taking
go.
off, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's inevitable for your business to like the whole world becomes smart. Your phone is smart. Hopefully you're smart. Hopefully I'm smart, right? But like, or hopefully you're becoming smarter, right? And it's inevitable for your business to just follow this track. And what do we do? I mean, because I mean that's complex, right? That's for geeks out there. That's for like nerds and all. Matt was like, let's for this episode, let's wear these like glasses, like nerdy glasses, kind of thing.
Pocket
But
protector. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's almost like
Maybe,
all these fast evolving technologies out there on the outside kind of pushes you to become a nerd in a sense, right? Pushes you to kind of figure things out, right?
yeah. It seems like it's a combination though, right, Anton? It's like it's all this kind of complexity, right? This detail, but at the same time, some of that complexity is merging together, right, into these nice kind of packages, these services
Mm-hmm.
online that you can just tap into and use. And you don't need to
Hmm.
be a programmer or a coder to leverage those, right? If you're doing payroll, there's payroll services for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're putting together email and your infrastructure, well, there's Microsoft 365 or Google packages for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the world's getting complicated in some ways, but if you're running that coffee shop, it's still coffee at the end of the day. It's still a coffee machine, but maybe some of that complexity, right, you can take away. And instead, hopefully, you can use that time, right, to reinvest it in your business to help grow your business, right? Maybe it's a second store, a second location, or a long-term plan to scale up that business, because that's where most businesses get caught up, right? Is in that scaling part. It might be great to have one coffee shop, but most likely that's not going to be enough, right? As a business owner, to just have one coffee shop, you might need several, right, shops, to make it viable. So yeah, let's talk about that some more here as far as what's going on complexity wise. Over the last few weeks, right? In the news, just ton of layoffs coming, right? In technology, right? A lot of layoffs. But what's kind of interesting with those numbers, right? With Google, with Alphabet, I think it was trying to think the number here. Was that about 12,000? I think layoffs that they had announced there. Well, there was about like 50,000 that was hired, right, in 2022, right? So it's not like the sky is falling necessarily. It's everybody was kind of high on that growth. All right, kind of overdid it there a little bit. Let's pull it back a little bit. But when you dig into the numbers on the layoffs, what's driving it? Who is? It's kind of a mixed bag on, on what that looks like. So tying it back to the complexity here, let's look at some of these here. So I know Netflix had a layoff recently as well too. Well, let's go back several years here. That was a highly sophisticated platform to build out, to put together, to stream. But there hasn't been a ton that's changed necessarily with Netflix over the last, let's say 6 months. So do you need those armies of programmers behind each one of these technology platforms? Spotify was on top of the list there. Same thing, right? Now, there's always new opportunities to grow out into, and they like to pursue those, and they're going to pursue those. But do they need that full army of people that they had before to do that? So for these programmers, instead of that detailed code, right, they're using kind of packages of code, right, that they can more quickly build things together, right? That's just how technology works, right? You get this complexity, it gets compacted together. Building a website, right? That's a perfect example. Used to be HTML code, right? And then it was a little bit easier, but still complicated. Now there's just, hey, if you want to set up an online store, boom, off you go, make your changes visually, you're good to go there. So we're getting rid of kind of a lot of that complexity. And we're starting to leverage certain tools, right? So let's tie it back to the leveraging these tools, making your life simpler. What's out there for that? What can we do? This scalable infrastructure, right? This cloud services that are out there. It's something that we all need to be much more informed about, because this infrastructure, like, that's part of strategy for your organization. Don't let people tell you otherwise, that no, strategy is this other whatever thing. Big thing of almost any business is that technology infrastructure, right? And strategy around that to enable their employees, right, to go out and execute the rest of the strategy that their organization has.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. But let's do a quick intro into like what is going on out there in the world right now.
Yeah.
There seems like there are a lot of the news kind of these days occupied by or taken over by geopolitics, right? And there's a
Yeah.
piece in this geopolitics, and we know all about the Ukraine war. We know about the possible crises and economies and things like that. But there's one piece that I think kind of goes under radar that maybe is larger than any of the stuff that you can possibly read these days, and that's a U.S.-China trade war, economic war, so to say. Now, there's something going on out there, and if you heard about it, great. But here's the thing: not long ago, U.S. basically blocked China as a country, as a manufacturer, as a large number of organizations, businesses, manufacturers in China from blocked these Chinese companies from accessing the technology, right? The chip technology, right? And that just kind of went, well, okay, sure. Like, we're trying to kind of protect our own manufacturer, things like that. But hold it, there's more. Let me just tell you, there's more. But before we do this, before we jump in there, let's do a quick intro into like, what is a chip? Like, what is this semiconductor technology and why is it so important? Why is it so vital in today's world, right?
Because we're
So
talking about what all this is built on, right? Like, what is all this cloud actually kind of boil back down to, right? And
Yeah.
it comes back to some of these details, and that's where, yeah, I think it's important to start there.
Yeah, all this cable infrastructure that Matt was talking about, it's built upon this one piece that is strategically important. It's a matter of national security. It's just like Matt said. It's a matter of it's piece of the strategy, right, in your company, technological piece kind of thing. It's the thing that will propel you forward or will maybe stall you from going forward. So it's an extremely important piece. So what is it? Like, what are we talking about? What is this chip? What is this magical piece of silicon that we're all kind of referring to? So, back again, let's start from scratch, from square A, I guess. Somebody came up with a group. I think it was two individuals, right, who came up with this idea of a transistor, right? It's an on-off switch. It was pretty bulky. It was, I think, encapsulated in glass, and it worked pretty well. And another group of people said, "Hey, is there anything we can do with it?" Right? And they built these transistors into a group, into a node, into a module. And then they said, hold on, we can, with this on-off switches, with the 0 and 1s, we can do certain operations, very simple operations, because again, they're bulky, connect a few of them together, and all of a sudden, it does like some basic calculation. Well, there's something magical about that on-off switch, and that's that on-off switch that still powers all of the stuff that Matt was talking about, the scale infrastructure, all of our lives, all of our devices and stuff, right? Another group of people comes in, and I think that was the intel at that point. They said, what if we, instead of putting all these wires to this on-off switch, what if we like print them into a piece of silicon, right? What if we create grooves, then fill them with metal, put the silicon over top, print grooves again, and all of a sudden we shrunk this multiple groups of these on-off switches, transistors, into this piece of silicon. Now, the number of transistors, right, at that point, let me just show you a graph that I think it's gonna explain a lot here. At that point, the number of transistors on the chip, look, we're talking about, see, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, up to like 2000s. I mean, it remained extremely low, right? And all of a sudden, I mean, look at this exponential growth. That's not exponential. That's like something else. There's a factor of that's like a power of 10 kind of factor here, where it's just becomes boom. So since 2009, it what? I mean, there's times and times more of like right now. So again, 2019 is where this graph ends. It's 18 billion transistors. We don't understand that number. We don't even understand what it means, but there's 18 billion of these on and off switches on a piece of silicon, right? That is, again, powering all this technology. So then Japan says, oh, this is cool technology. We can create some chips for the entire world, and we'll take over US, and let's do it. So they did. US said, oh, great. Now that we've realized that this is a matter of national security, these things are extremely important. Why? Military, space industries, they love chips. As soon as those chips start developing, I mean, space was the first industry to use them. Military followed not long after, right? So chips are wonderful, and there's this theme of like countries, governments saying this is strategically important to us. So again, dovetailing into what Matt was referring to. So U.S. Imposes 100% custom duty on Japanese imports of chips. That crashes Japanese industry of chip making, right? Then something interesting happens. So Taiwan goes, okay, we can't fight U.S., right? That would be kind of silly. Japan tried. We have their example. Why don't we work with them? Why don't we? And so here's what they started. They lured back a bunch of engineers that went to study to the U.S. They learned about this technology and how to make it and things like that. They lured them back back home, back to Taiwan, and they said, hey, let's create a first manufacturing here. Then they reached out to Intel and they said, hey, you design it, you make it, you own it. You design it, yeah, and we'll be making it. It was as simple as that. Now, they did it in response to China threat of taking over Taiwan. They said, how do we get US to protect us? I mean, does that click? Because these days, I mean, when Biden is asked, like, "Oh, is U.S. going to do militarily? Is it going to do something about China taking over Taiwan?" And he goes, "Yes," without any sort of pause there. So, and he's just speaking on behalf of folks who are actually going to go out there and do some meaningful things. But anyway, so Taiwan just does this really cool trick, and they say, "Hey, if we can't fight them, let's just work with them." So then there's massive infrastructure is being built. They do it well. They do it wonderfully. They make it inexpensively, right? And that's why. And again, I don't have the numbers on this, but like 80% of all the world, all the chips in the world are made in basically these couple of facilities in Taiwan. So again, that's the country that becomes extremely important, strategically important for the entire world, right? And so yeah, and so that's
Well,
how they got
yeah,
U.S. protection.
just one company there, right? You might hear that Taiwan Semiconductor, right? TSMC, right? Or the
Mm-hmm.
kind of the initials there. You'll hear that used interchangeably there. But as of the end of, I believe it was going into 2022, they had like 54% of the market, right,
Mm-hmm.
for these kind of advanced semiconductors,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
my assumption was you hear about these chip manufacturers out there, AMD, Intel. Well, they're actually a lot of them sitting on top of a
TSMC
Taiwan
TSMC
semiconductor.
makes their chips. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. So you can see where geopolitically there, right? That's so much concentration and that's used in everything. If there's any type of geopolitical disruption there of any kind,
Mm-hmm.
right? That could be traumatic, right, for really the world, right, in
Yeah.
disrupting, car production, right? Cars, we were looking up Ford F-150. Yeah, they used to have a couple hundred chips in them. Now with the electric ones, I think they have something like 1,400
1,200,
chips
something like
that
that. Yeah.
are
Yeah.
in there,
Something
or
crazy.
1,200. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just more and more important. And yeah, I think you'll get into it, but these chips they're not easy to make, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well, and that becomes like
challenging.
new cotton, new oil, right? That basically those things started wars, right? People fought, like governments and countries fought for oil not long ago, right? And so this becomes like a new oil in a sense. And like we said, let me go back to what I just mentioned: the fact that military is an industry, right? Defense industry, they love chips, and they get to use the best ones. So when the first one comes out, this 6 nanometer, 5 nanometer, 4 nanometer, they're gonna be the first ones to use them because they are trying to figure out how to outperform their rivalry, right? Their rival country opponent out there, because so they will have a better cutting edge weapon out there. So now, do you see how very quickly this simple technology, this collection of these on-off switches, become very important, strategically important for a country, right? Why would it not be important to you as a business, right? To you as an organization? Again, we're kind of getting there. So, but yeah, so we are here. We hear Pelosi going to Taiwan and basically positioning U.S. as a ally and saying, I guess, reiterating the fact that the U.S. is ally and the fact that, I mean, just don't touch Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan is a strategically important partner for the West, for the entire West. Then the Chip Act, right? So since October of last year, U.S. government, European governments, they said, okay, this is important, and the fact that Taiwan makes them is great, but it's a matter of national security. We want to own a piece of it, right? So there are fabs, and that's the term that they use for manufacturing of these places, of these chips. So these
Mhm.
fabs are all of a sudden are built all over the world, right? Israel, Europe, multiple of them, and a whole lot of them in the U.S. By a number of companies. So then we hear, kind of going back to what's happening in Ukraine and Putin and Russia, we hear Putin threatening the world, basically the West and the world of, hey, if you're gonna do something silly here, if you don't let me do what I'm trying to do, I'm gonna nuke the heck out of the West and the world and Ukraine. And all of a sudden, we hear that some information leaks that the fact that he had a conversation with basically with the U.S. right and NATO, and he receives a message of, hey, 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 listen, that last comment that you made, we're not going to nuke you in exchange. Like, that's not, first, that's not cool what you said, right? But here's the thing, we're going to do something about it. We're not going to nuke you back. We've got a technology that's better than nuclear. And you're going, what? And again, based on what I'm reading out there, they basically said, hey, it'll take us 3 days to destroy the entire infrastructure of your country. Like, don't do this. And next thing you know, I mean, the next day Putin shows up at the press conferences and he says, hey, I just want to clarify something. We're not going to nuke a non-nuclear country. We're not the kind of country that you misunderstood totally what I said just yesterday. What kind of technology, what is it that's better than the nuclear weapon technology is out there, right? And we're quickly learning that these are drones. They're not as powerful as nuclear weapon, but they're extremely precise. And what makes them so precise? Chips, right? It's this new technology. It's this software and a hardware kind of combination. So anyway, if this is not enough for us to kind of understand that how much power is behind those chips, those on-off switches, I mean, literally, that are baked into a piece of silicon, right? They're extremely important. But let's kind of go back to what Matt was talking about and why are they important for your business? And Matt, I'm actually kind of, I don't know, let's bounce this idea kind of off of each other. Like, why are chips, why is all this technology important for business? We hear a lot about what? Like AI, right? There's a lot
Right.
about like, chat GPT as all of a sudden like the best thing out there. But I mean, there's a lot of models out there. There's a lot of AI stuff that's been happening. This is just a, kind of, I mean, it's a milestone, right? It's a model that takes a little space, right, on the device,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
very capable. Now, that's a huge accomplishment. But AI has
Yeah.
been out there. We've been training AIs out there. Does it play like do chips play a role in that? And what else? What else does it impact out there? What industries does it impact?
I mean, it's almost everything, right? That it's
Yeah.
really in. But I think, like you're saying here, that the chips, right, they translate into processing power, calculations, can run things faster. It's really is building a tool, right, which kind of builds more sophisticated tools on top of it, right? So it's kind of like going from an old school handsaw, right, trying to cut down a tree or build a cabinet, right, to now you've got this giant tool, this caterpillar, this bulldozer, right, where you can get on there and just move massive amounts, right, of work to push that along, to construct it, to build it, build that product. So I think when you really boil it down, right, from kind of a concept wise, the faster processing speed, right, and the more efficient that is, really that does directly translate to power, which is why, right, the government is investing so heavily in the US, right? What we've all learned from COVID is, yeah, international trade is great, right? Hey, a lot of us, right, free capitalists, let's trade, let's bring everyone up. But geopolitically, right, there's also considerations there to take into account as well, too. And maybe we just don't want to outsource things that are so strategic or that may be potentially used against us as well, too. I think a lot of thinking on this was just, okay, maybe this country has a little bit less processing power than this other one, but kind of a missile is a missile. And at some point, right, like a computer is a computer. I use it to surf the web. Like, how fast do I need it? But there's additional sophistication, right, within whether it's weaponry or right or within your business that it's enabling, right? So with a missile, yeah, precision GPS. Okay, we've had that figured out for a while, but maneuverability, right? Is it able to fly very low, right, and adapt around the terrain that it's in? Is it able to avoid detection or to jam other systems? Or if an incoming anti-defense missile is going at it, right, is it able to calculate that, see that, and change course last second? Um, so yeah, we're getting kind of technical and detailed on some of the theories there, but when we bring it back to the business, right, it's just same application there, a lot of sophistication. And why aren't we using that? We don't have to be the programmers behind it, but we at least need to get our heads wrapped around what does that kind of look like for our business? How can we leverage it? What are other companies doing? What's already done for us? Because there's no that's the worst in business, is recreating the wheels when there's already something out there, because
Exactly.
time is
Exactly.
money. And yeah, maybe you can do something cheaper for yourself, but if that takes you 30 days in your organization, and
Or
oh,
hiring
and
15
then
highly skilled individuals and paying them salary when the bicycle's already invented. Yeah.
yeah, and then that technology that you could have plugged into, right? It's continuing to evolve and upgrade. And don't you just want to ride that wave versus constantly trying to, fight the currents and the waves and the storms? Plug into it, right? To leverage it, to accelerate your business and to streamline.
And now, if you're
Yeah.
thinking that maybe your industry is not impacted by this, well, let me read you just a short list of industries that are extremely impacted by AI and just technology overall, scalable infrastructure that we're talking about today. So, healthcare, automotive,
Mm.
right? That's a given. Banking, retail, manufacturing of any sort, right? We know exactly what we're talking about because it's robotics, and it's the better processes and making things cheaper, and cheaper meaning you're in business, meaning you are effective, right, at selling them. Education, right? Again, huge. Security, surveillance, defense, agriculture, legal, transportation, and the rest. Speaking of transportation, see, that's another piece. I mean, these trucks. We live in a city where that industry is very kind of prevalent, right? Lots of kind of organizations pop up here,
Mhm.
and I mean, trucks can be equipped with all kinds of technology that routes you to places, that assists you with all kinds of stuff, and that's efficiency, right? That's effectiveness in a sense. That's getting to point A to point B versus not getting there, right? At times. So, and again, going back to why is it important and kind of what to do with it and all. So the graphical applications are out there, right? We talk about
Mhm.
AI,
Mhm.
but we're also talking about
Mhm.
the increased power of like GPUs, right? And I mean, tell me, like, try to name an industry that cannot use something that is very user centric and that's graphics related. I literally I know a couple of companies that like have been selling homes to people during COVID, and people have never traveled to a particular place, and yet that agency, that company, sold a house to them by the means of graphics and stuff. Like it's 3D tours, it's video tours,
Yeah.
it's just all kinds of like, again, name an industry that cannot possibly impact out of something like this. So it's huge.
Mhm.
And of course, just like you said, Matt, processing power, right? Infrastructure. I mean, if you are in the kind of industry that we were talking about, it's you know exactly what we're referring to here. It's you're highly dependent on these things. But let's kind of shift gears here and go towards maybe a bit more about, okay, so now that we know we need it, right? But man, that is so scary, right? That is so like, it's so brain draining. I'm not the kind of person who knows much about this stuff. So let me go ahead and I'm talking about maybe on behalf of like probably 80% of small businesses here, right? Let me find somebody who's smart enough, who knows about it, who's young enough, who
Ooh,
knows
technical.
anything about
A,
GPUs in data centers. Well,
a millennial, a Gen Z. Yeah.
yeah. And so you end up outsourcing some of this skill set and technical knowledge to a guy who looks and seems to be smart enough to figure this out. Well, and that could be a big mistake, right? So first, outsourcing this strategically important piece. US did it to China in a sense, right? Now they're saying, yeah, let's reverse that that trend, right? And you will get to the point where you will understand how important it is for you, your organization, to own a piece of it. But hold on, how do we own a piece of data center? Like, how do we
Mm.
do that? How do we, I mean, that's a huge investment. I mean, I got to raise money, I got to pull out a loan. I mean, oh my goodness, like, I don't think I'm able to do this. Well, guess what? And so Matt sent me this graph here. Matt, can I show you some of
Yeah,
the
let's pull
some
it
of the
up.
providers here? If you give me a second, and I'm gonna let you
Well, if you
maybe kind
need,
of speak to it, but
I think it's pretty clear case of how big this industry has gotten, right? When we're talking about, 217 billion was what we were running on later part of last year, right? And growing quickly still, right? There's just so many companies are using data,
Mm-hmm.
and so many companies are outsourcing that, right? So it used to be when you had a business, you kind of had, you kind of connected the computers together. Maybe there was one old one sitting around on a cabinet or something that kind of, was a shared drive and you connected to, and then that always went down, and then you had to, it was just always a hassle, right? But now there's companies, right, that are just, let us take care of that completely for you. It's going to be way more better, efficient. It's going to be cheaper, almost always. You're not going to have to worry about all these security attacks all the time, right? That just these standalone type servers, right, are more prone to. So yeah, some big numbers there, right? So AWS, basically Amazon, right? 34% of the market numbers there, right? Pretty big number. And you think about all these transactions that Amazon kind of started out on and that infrastructure that they needed, right? That was kind of part of that. But we don't have the chart here, but the profit from AWS is so much larger than actually from the Amazon, from the shipping and delivery part. It's very impressive, right? And they take those profits and they can invest in whatever areas that they want to. If they want to do more home delivery, they can do that. Azure, which is basically Microsoft, right? So similar type services there as well too. Google Cloud, those are really kind of your three big players in that category in the space. And there's some others that they start to offer a little bit more specific services, right? So we're talking generically. A lot of times we've been mentioning storage, but there's other services, features, services, software that that are out there. So huge market, right, at the end of the day for these services.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, other words, you can own a piece of infrastructure, right? Think about it. Why infrastructure is important. For example, Matt has mentioned Amazon. Amazon wouldn't be possible if post office infrastructure wasn't there, right? They would
Right.
have to ship their packages themselves. I mean, they do some of it right now, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they're highly dependent on the post office, on the shipping infrastructure, and thankfully by now we do have it, and it's a pretty robust. And unless you live in a country where it's not, but for the most part, even in like third world countries, I mean, they're figuring things out when it comes to shipment, because it is important. It
Yeah.
enables, again, it enables a bunch of businesses, farmers, to sell their seeds online, things like that. But you can own a piece of this infrastructure, right? And it doesn't necessarily cost that much. And in fact, there with most of these services out here. Whoops, hold on. Let me show you my screen. With most of these services here, you don't have to have like a long-term contract. I mean, you can try things out for a month, and if it doesn't work, you can jump off of it. Now, what kind of things you can rent, right, from these data centers? And I was showing it to Matt at some point, and he was like, you know what? Let's show it to everyone. And I mean, I'm not going to show you anything that's like super sophisticated or anything. You can go and look it up yourself. But what I was showing Matt, and he was pretty excited about it, was basically a pricing page of Google Cloud that lists all the services, right, that you can possibly get here. Let me get rid of this pop up. Yeah, there you go. So here's a pricing page of Google Cloud services, right? So here are the pieces, right up at the top here. Here are the pieces that you can lease or rent from Google, right? And this could be something as simple as compute engine, which it means a server, a piece of a server. And you can say,
Mm-hmm.
how many instances do you need? You say one, for example, right? You select the type of operating system. You don't have to install it. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to buy it. It's there. You rent it from them. So you go, let me do Linux, which by the way, that's the OS that powers the world, right? Unless you look at your iPhone or Mac, the rest of the stuff, I mean, it's a little bit of Windows, but I mean, literally, you look at your Tesla screen, that's Ubuntu, if I'm not mistaken, or that's their proprietary version of Linux. So Linux is the OS that drives the world these days, basically. Then you select, I don't know what purpose is it. You select the series, which I believe like essentially how something about the I/O that kind of goes in it and things like that. So you probably have to read up a little bit about it, and that's why you got these big, humongous question marks here, so you can see what all this means. But then you select just like I mean, we all have been shopping for a computer, right? So you go, oh, I need more RAM, I need more hard drive. Well, guess what? We're shopping here for our server. So we say, well, I need 16 gigs RAM, right? 64 gig hard drive, I believe, right? No, here's a bootable disk hard drive. So we'll say, I don't know, we need 1,000 gigabytes, which is 1 terabyte, right? Balanced persistent. Now let's do a better hard disk. If you know anything about, let's do SSD. It's faster because our application is just we want our users to reference this hard drive for say our application that's hosted there
Yeah.
all the time. So pretty fast hard drive, right? We're looking pretty good. So we're shopping for a computer here essentially for a piece of server. And guess what? And here's what it's going to cost us based on the usage. So it's 730 hours, per month and things like that. And mind you, we've selected a pretty good, a whole bunch of storage, which we don't need it that much, right? So for example, let's go back and change it. Say we want just a little less because the storage is a separate piece that you can get.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not gonna do this to them. So you want it to be bootable, right? Let's do, I don't know, 20 gigs, and let's keep everything the same. So all of a sudden, you see how drastically it changes. So we've got, yeah, so $300 per month, and you've got a highly sophisticated server. Now, server computer without any sort of like software on it, or any like, what is your computer gonna do, right? What is it gonna do? Then you can lease, rent, buy certain pieces kind of attached to it, certain engines. So one of the pieces that you will probably recognize is let's see, yeah, like cloud storage. And in fact, here, let's delete our configuration for server. Let's just get ourselves some cheap storage. Which, by the way, I use it and I store some of my documents, and it's using versioning, meaning I can pull back that same document from say a year ago and see what type of changes I've made back then. I can restore it to it. So it's
Mhm.
really, really cool stuff. So let's buy storage again from them. So we want standard storage, right? Cold storage, archive, it's something it's storage that's not used as often. So it's cheaper, but let's choose the best one, right? Total amount of storage. Let's go for say 100 gig online storage, and let's see how much this is going to cost us, right? You know anything about Google Drive, how much they charge you and things like that. But so again, it's pretty comparable. Like 100 gigs is the kind of basic package you get everywhere.
Mhm.
Let's see what else. We want it to be Iowa, or we want it to be based out of kind of like a regional cloud storage, so to say, like US. Let's keep it regional because our company is located not far from here, right? So how much will
Yep.
100 gigs cost us on a monthly basis? Well, it's going to cost us $2, right? And you
Man.
own you own 100 gig on a server somewhere for $2 per month. Again, it's highly competitive when it comes to like it just makes sense.
Right.
Some of the other things, I
Right.
guess. Yeah, man, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I was just thinking here, right? Might be a good point where, okay, so there's these cloud services out there, a little bit technical, but it's basically kind of like what computer are you selecting, basically, right? How frequently maybe are you going to access that? Few questions like that. So let's maybe think about some of the businesses that might sit on top of that, right? So a big one might be, let's say, like Netflix, right? So Netflix is streaming, right, back and forth, all these videos and servicing, millions of customers at any given time, right? Lots of data out there, right? So, well, we're not all going to build Netflix, right? But maybe something a little bit more local, something we could imagine. We've got a great business in Chattanooga here, right? It's called Legacy Box, right? And they basically have a service, right, where you get a box. They literally send you a box. You put in all your pictures, all your old films, all your old VHS tapes, your any of this stuff, right, that's been sitting around in the attic that you don't want to throw away, but you want to do something with. You put it in there, you send it in. very inexpensively. They digitize it, right? They upload it to the cloud, right? Cloud service like this, right? We have to live in Chattanooga where it's one of the fastest internets in the country that's there. Oh, and you've got great storage now, right? That you can scale up with the business, right? Keep it out there, maybe permanently. I'm not sure what their latest is, a year or however long, whatever package you get there, and boom, off to the races you're going, right? So there's just so many different uh, businesses, applications, right, that could sit on top of this. Why for $2 a month are you messing around with any type of server, right, inside of your building, hiring some maintenance IT person, right? Things go down, right? They shows you, right, the online percent time, all of that, right? Very reliable. What? Yeah. Why would you do anything else but leverage one of these services? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so imagine you're building an application, right? And you need a certain functionality to it. So, for example, we have got a text box, right? Where we want to put the text. We've got a button on the bottom of it. And we want for this top text to be pronounced, right? So, text to speech, right? Well, guess what? And all these cloud services that you can lease, rent out there, be it AWS, Azure, or Google. I'm just pulling Google here because I know a little bit kind of more about it. We use a little bit more about it. One of them is, for example, it's speech to text or text to speech. If you need a functionality like that in your application, well, guess what? You don't have to develop this model. You can rent it from Google. And let me tell you something about the Google. So AWS, I guess, what's the difference between say AWS, Google, and Azure, right? AWS is the largest, and it's been out there for quite some time, and it makes a ton of money, right? Just like Matt referenced. Azure is easiest to implement. It makes probably most sense if you're using Microsoft Office or 365, Microsoft 365. It will speak really well to all these documents and servers that you already have, say, Windows server running. But
Good point.
Google stuff. Here's the thing about Google. Their quality of all these models, all these engines that they're giving you, they are the best. I mean, if you know anything about Google and the fact that they go on books. No, hold on. Play.google.com and go to books. They're free audiobooks out there. I don't know how they do this, what's the licensing fee, whatever, but it's free books that are read by these engines, the text to speech engines. They are awesome. I mean, you hear these like inhalations, like when it's a machine, it's a robotic voice, but you can't tell that it's robotic. Like there's this moments where like that voice reads something and then it goes like, you can hear as if there's like some inhalation going on. It's like, it's fascinating. So their models, their engines are the best. And so you can literally create an audiobook without reading it out loud into the microphone kind of thing. Imagine that. I mean,
So
it
Anton,
takes,
you're saying those services, right? When you create that app, instead of like trying to build something within the app to like get it to speak and read that text that's in there, this is something that you just plug in from Google Cloud, right? One
Mhm.
of the services they offer. They have the technology for that, and boom, you can just tie that in and off you go.
You connect it
Yeah.
to, and remember these three letters, API. You connect it to a bicycle that's already been invented for you that does something really cool. Google offers them, AWS offers them, Azure, many other companies offer just all kinds of APIs. And you can build a simple website and connect it to a pretty sophisticated API, and you're off you go. You've got a pretty solid MVP, if not the final product that can live, that can function, that is scalable. As long as it's, again, you're using a scalable infrastructure. Let's go back to our little title here, right? So, scalable infrastructure. You want to grow. You want to make sure you're not, like Matt said, you're not hosting your website off of some sort of a computer that's in your office where electricity goes in and out, right? You want
Right.
it to be built on scalable infrastructure. So anyway, just go out there. I guess the point of today's conversation is don't be scared of these things. It's sorry, but we all have to be educated on these matters, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be educated because this is like this is some sort of a software engineering, hardware specifications. But you gotta be. You remember how in the beginning we started talking about you have to be this connector of things, right? You have to be connecting dots. You have to be connecting problems and solutions. You have to be connecting users, patients, clients with folks who can get things done, right? You are the one. And so
Mhm.
growing your business, growing your impact out there in the community is this. So that's it. It's kind of like bad news. I mean, today is a pretty bad episode for some of you. It's too late. If you don't do this, the world's gonna go ahead, and it's going ahead pretty fast, pretty rapidly. So just educate yourself on this. Go out there and just kind of browse around. I mean, literally, just go through this like pricing page, see how much it costs. Try to rent something. Try to rent a server for $5 per month. Things like that, and see what it does, and see. Just kind of play with it. Next thing you know, meet with somebody. Oh, and by the way, Matt talks a lot about the boards, right? Matt is building, his practice around boards, right? Education of boards, pulling kind of certain expertise to the board. And here's my 2 cents. And Matt, tell me if I'm entirely wrong here, but I think you need to have somebody who's extremely technical, right? Beat whatever industry it is and whatever matters to you, but you got to have somebody who's very technical on the board, right? I mean, is that important?
Yeah, yeah, or at least supporting it, right, in some way, right? Preferably on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
really, any company, if technology is a major component of almost any organization, right? That board, that governance structure, right? They're the ones kind of keeping their eyes out, right? Looking further ahead, what's going on, what's changing in the industry? Is there something that's going to come along and knock us out? Right. So that somebody understanding that technology is very important. And maybe it's not a Fortune 500 sophisticated board, but maybe it's a smaller, it's a nonprofit, it's a smaller group there. There's there's so much complexity that can be taken away if the organization implements certain things like we talked about with Microsoft 365 or one of the Google solutions for that, right? Because sharing your documents together, right? Maybe you want to have an intranet, you want to add people with their email addresses there. You want security. You want things to be, hey, what if somebody gets angry and leaves and deletes everything? Right? You want to be able to quickly back up or to restore those things. And looking forward, it's you want to be able to have webinars and seminars and do these meetings, right? These boundaries comes down, right? It used to be, hey, maybe your nonprofit was just focused in your town. Well, not anymore, right? Like you can open that up a lot now, right, to the rest of the country or rest of the world, right, and get people from around the world, right, involved to call into a board meeting, right? To be able to work on things on a whiteboard right there, right? Via the cloud, via those systems. So, yeah, definitely when it comes to board and you're looking to kind of put a team together there, advisors together, that's definitely one that you want to lean in on, right? Probably legal as well too, right? Accounting, but yeah, I would definitely recommend having someone a little bit more proficient on the IT side of things. And it sounds like Anton too that it's you don't always necessarily need to know how it works, right? You don't necessarily you don't need to know all the details, but you need to understand, familiarize yourself with what, what is out there, right? And how it could be used.
In the day, infrastructure that we're all worrying about is brick and mortar, right? And so the chairs and tables, right? And guess what? There's a new piece of infrastructure that we're all kind of have to worry about, and that's the expense piece as well. So again, I totally understand. Yeah, I totally with you as far as it does cost money. Hey Matt, we're
Mhm.
back.
Hey,
And it is a piece of infrastructure that is going to cost you some, but it's no longer desks and brick and mortar and desk and chairs that matter. We all have our desk and a chair. Just think about it, right? The remote work is through the roof, and you don't have to worry about desk and chair anymore. What you do have to worry about, and in a sense, like kind of spend on, expect to put some money in it and all on a regular basis or kind of one time thing is to have that infrastructure in place, and hopefully everything that you just mentioned it's an easy kind of plug and play solutions. Now, everything that's easy is extremely hard to do, right? We know a little bit about kind of simplicity around I don't know, highly sophisticated devices. Now that takes a lot of work. So that's the part I think that all have to be educated on. Why is it important? What pieces need to be there? Matt, you mentioned a little bit about this whole like documents flow in the organization, things like that. I think we should do a part two to this conversation and maybe talk a little bit more about what pieces, like, okay, what apps, what platforms, say, do you use, do I use? And we can pull up a couple of people that are smarter than us, say, right? And ask them, like, guys, what do you use for that scalable infrastructure? Like, you just
Yeah.
mentioned a piece that I think, again, that was like a golden nugget. If you're still exchanging emails with documents in them and saying, hey, this is the latest version, check this out. Oh, Sarah added such and such paragraph in this document. Hold on, that's no longer final. Here's the final. And you've got
Yeah.
these emails with final. No, this is final. There's such a thing that's like sharing a document, and you can edit it at the same time, right? Microsoft 365 does it. Google
Yeah.
Doc does it. And I mean, it cuts on communication. It brings efficiency. It eliminates any sort of errors, right? People are no
Mhm.
longer frustrated because they're using the thing and they have to redo it and stuff. It's a
Mhm.
win-win-win all across, and it will cost you
Yeah.
a little bit, but you're gonna have so much fun as a result.
Yeah. No, a lot of these packages is really not too difficult to like at least get started, right? And maybe that's just one or two people in your organization, right? That are just, hey, let us kind of set this up, play with this a little bit, right? We're not going to force it out to everybody necessarily, right? As things start. But I think you figure out pretty quickly that, yeah, a lot of these services like Microsoft 365 for a smaller organization, really not that sophisticated. And it's so nice too with the different packages that are available. Like you said, it doesn't matter if you use Mac, if you're using a PC, if you're using your phone, right, to access. And that's what's great too, right, with all these cloud services is you get a question, it's the weekend, it's customer, boom, just pull it up on your phone, right? Take a look at it there. And then that scalability, it's so easy to add an additional user or let's say, yes, you've got the professional staff in the office, but okay, what about the workers out there on the line, right? They're in the factory. Like, do they need emails or not? Or hey, you know what? It's not that much. It's only a few bucks a month. They get their own account. Yeah, we want to send out messages, make sure, we have meetings. Yep, they can connect in there. It's so much easier to bring in people to your organization like that and just kind of giddy up and go. If anything happens, they take off, they walk out, whatever, right? You can basically turn off that access to them, right? Limit their, the connectivity there, and off you go there. So yeah, let's take a look at some of those Microsoft 365, maybe Google. But then I think we were talking about too. What might be really interesting is the different ERP systems that are out there, right? So the ERP is kind of like what's that backbone within your organization, right? That's keeping track of accounting and invoices and transfers back and forth between companies and document manage and customer relationship management, right? CRM. There's cloud services out there now, right? With NetSuite, right? For is really coming along there. SAP, different platforms, right? And people hear about Salesforce and it's like, why is this company so big? What are they doing exactly? Should I be looking at that? Yeah, we can dive into that a little bit next time or coming up
Yeah.
here.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So next time we're going to be talking about tools. Just yeah,
Yeah.
any sort of tools, and let us know what tools do you use and you are pretty excited about, and then maybe bring some delight with folks that you work in. Because let me tell you something, Gen Zs are they're pretty tacky, and when they start working with you and they see that there's like the process is pretty clunky and communication is very like kind of broken into pieces. It's all over. It's segmented. I mean, that creates some factors that are not beneficial for that employee versus creating an environment where things are easy, things are simple, things are kind of streamlined and fast. We don't spend a lot of time on just all kinds of dumb stuff, right? We go straight to the thing. Takes me 15 minutes to do this, and off I
Mhm.
go to the next thing. So nobody wants to be spinning wheels and not getting far. So okay, so tools next
Yeah.
time, and ERPs, CRMs, just anything that kind of gets you going and gets you to do things. So
Yeah,
definitely.
maybe there's some other tools too. Yeah, like you said, anybody want to leave any comments there, right? How does this stuff connect together, right? What are the services out there? Like, yeah, let us know.
Hmm.
There's always new ones that are coming along as well too, right? And I think that's why you like Google is Google is always so great at kind of playing, experimenting, right? Putting things out there.
Hmm.
And some of them work, some of them don't. Oh well, right? Like you go on and they stay at the forefront. There's like Microsoft, right? They tend to come around a little bit later, a little bit more standardized, and so yeah, excited to dig into some of those different applications.
Yeah, and just to the point that Matt just said, and we're about to wrap up here. So one last piece I'm going to show you, just to kind of blow your mind. One of the engines that you can rent from Google is called GKE Autopilot. Read a little bit more about this, and your mind's going to be blown. I mean, you can create stuff that's like, we're not talking about documents and Word documents and all. I mean, we're talking about scalable infrastructure for whatever. And I guess the point is, if you don't feel empowered with all this technology, with all these autopilots that you can rent from Google for a month and just kind of try things out, if you're not excited, if you don't feel empowered, if you still feel like the world is against you and the circumstances are not there and the time is not right, I don't know what in the world are you talking about, because the time is right, the infrastructure is there, the world is ready. We just have to be Steve Jobs of this world. I hate to say it that way, but like we have to be connecting the dots, right? We have to be
Mhm.
connecting our users to somebody who can get things done. We have to be connecting problems and solutions. We have to be packaging these solutions into user-centric products and services. And so I
Mhm.
don't know. I guess one last thing I want to say is like, this is it. Like, this is no excuses. Like, no excuses. This is the time to do it, and you've got literally have everything possible for you to get it done. So, Matt, anything you want to add before we kind of sign off here?
I would just say one example with that, going back with myself, as far as don't be afraid, right? Within your organization, it's not up to the IT department, right? Or it's not necessarily up to the CEO. It's up to the person that can kind of figure it out, right? On where they see where the opportunity is, right? Maybe they've used this at another organization, right? And so just one quick example there was in my intern days at Kellogg's way back, right? Internet's kind of new, it hasn't been really built out yet. Kellogg, I think, only had one intranet page. It was the IT department, so people weren't even accessing information, right? There's no directory. And I was an intern. I volunteered there with my business fraternity, built a website there. It was, kind of a new thing at the time. Got it done. I thought, you know what? I can do that within my organization there at Kellogg, within our fairly large department. I can do that. They were going to outsource it, and like, this is going to take way too long. I can put a model together on this, right? And we go. And within probably a month and a half, right? I'm an intern, right? With four other vice presidents around at Kellogg, right? Showing them this department intranet site, right? That's built out with things like, names directories and linking all these files. And you think that's nothing now, but back then, right? Like, it was a newer thing that people just didn't see, especially internally. Um, and so don't be afraid to just take the lead on it, right? You might have to kind of put your foot in the door a little bit, right? To kind of keep it open. Maybe it's something your boss isn't familiar with. Maybe your boss isn't really a technical person and they just can't even understand, right? What you would like to kind of build out and propose. But if you've got a solution to your organization, that's what the leaders want in your organization, is people to step forward, right? And put themselves out there, right, to help lead your organization. So don't be afraid to get out there, lead in your organization, learn along the way as you go, have that growth mindset, and just keep growing.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we just need to show up. So,
Yeah.
guys, thanks a lot for staying with us until now. If you watched it until now, I'm very proud of you. I always say this: if you're at the gym, great. I love those push-ups. I love those dumbbells. I love those weight bars and stuff. So keep it going. This is an inspiration for a lot of us. So Matt, again, great conversation. There will be part two. We'll talk more about it. And yeah, so stay tuned, guys. And we will talk to you soon.